couple weeks ago, Spider-Man PS4 came out. That means I've spent all of my free time swinging through the Big Apple, fighting crime, taking selfies, chasing pigeons, and trying to get back together with MJ. So let's talk about it. Spider-Man PS4 is an open-world game set in a marvelized version of New York City. Here, a slightly experienced Peter Parker in his 20s battles to balance work, family, and his love life while being a superhero. Along the way, he meets a young Miles Morales and must battle his rogues gallery to save the city. Hi, if you're new here, my name is SeanChandler, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate to that, you're probably in the right place. With that in mind, normally I talk about movies on my channel, but because Marvel movies are such a huge part of my channel, and Spider-Man is a Marvel character, and this is such a big, blockbuster, iconic game, it seemed like the perfect opportunity for me to do my very first video game review, and hopefully this will turn out good. With that said, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, have you played it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did it live up to the expectations? Or are you the one person out there that hated the game? Also, if you're a Nintendo or an Xbox person, tell me just how disappointed you are that you're not able to play this game. With that said, let's get started talking about the good. The first thing I just have to talk about with this game is the world. It is this massive recreation of New York City with a bunch of these little Marvel iconic things sprinkled throughout the city, which just makes for a fun playground to swing around and see all of these kind of classic New York City locations recreated in the game. Like, as I was playing the game, I kept pausing to pull my son over to be like, hey, remember in this movie when they went to this place? There it is right there. Hey, remember this in this movie? And like teaching him about New York City and that like things you see in movies sometimes are real because of this video game. And part of what makes it so impressive is that it all flows smoothly together. You can go to the top of a skyscraper, look all around this enormous city, and go to any of those places without it needing to pause to load. Speaking of this world, the graphics here in play are pretty phenomenal. Where graphics are and the level of detail inside of them, it's just pretty shocking to me where we're at. Like, I was climbing up a building, and as I was going through it, I could see through the glass into the side of the building, and there was all this detail, the stuff happening in there. And then on the glass, it's reflecting backwards on the city behind me and changing angles for both of them as this is happening. Just truly phenomenal type detail in the graphics of what is being displayed at any given moment, what has to be rendered just for me able to see that much information. Likewise, like I said, when you're at the top of a building, you can look across this enormous city and it's all there in gorgeous detail. Now, the actual cutscenes themselves didn't seem that groundbreaking to me in the detail of facial features in particular, but outside of that, the gameplay is just astounding to me where video games are at. From there, let's move on to the story, and they've crafted a very complex narrative that both has a character arc for Peter Parker involving his relationship with the people around him, as well as this complex, sinister villain plan that has plot twists, reveals all throughout the game that makes for a story that could stand alone on itself and be engaging, but add to that, you're the one playing through this gigantic adventure as things are happening. There's also elements inside of it that are tragic as you're watching the origin story of certain characters, and you're kind of a part of that origin story as it's being developed through the gameplay, and it makes for something very much more emotionally engaging than most video games. Since it's a game, we gotta talk about the gameplay, and for my money, it's pretty phenomenal. I'm not an enormous gamer, so maybe there's some better games out there with a better interface, but what they created there for me was one of the best experiences I've had in actually controlling a character with all these different options with gadgets, fighting styles, interacting with the surroundings around you, the swing interface. I felt like I was in control of the character. I felt like in a fight, I wasn't just button mashing. I was thinking, no, I want to grab that thing over there, and it would grab that thing over there because of the buttons that I pushed. And it had the right prompts to help me to do things using the Spidey sense. All of it was very intuitive while being something that you felt like you were growing with the character as you learned new abilities, as you got new gadgets, and all that goes back to great gameplay. And this is also part of what makes the world that they've created so fun and engaging is because the controls work. You want to have fun swinging through New York City and you're like, wow, I'm in Central Park right now. Wow, I'm running up the Empire State Building to take a selfie on top of it. And there's all these little details inside of the game that make it fun. Photo mode is fun in a game where you're in an actual city and then going to fake Marvel locations inside of this real city. And that's the sort of detail in this that takes it kind of to that extra level that makes it particularly fun and engaging. Likewise, inside of that, your character, his gadgets, his suits, everything is upgradable on multiple different levels. So as soon as you kind of get used to playing one way, you'll get a new suit that can do things you've never been able to do before, and then you can customize inside of that, so it keeps being a new experience. The way that you fight groups of thugs changes as the game goes along because you have new skills you've learned, new gadgets, and all of it, you can create your own style with all these different things that it adds into the mix, which just makes for a fun experience that keeps expanding and growing. And as this is an open world game, it's jam-packed with little side missions that you can do, whether that's chasing after pigeons where you're kind of using your swing effect, or whether you're tracking down bombs, you're doing research projects. There's all kinds of different things that add variety into the mix, that give you new ways, the kind of different tokens and stuff to upgrade your gadgetry. And likewise, it gives you a reason to explore the city and go to all these different places and not just kind of hang out in one particular spot. And I think what they wisely did with these side missions is they used them as a way to incorporate in some of the side characters that it wouldn't fully make sense to put everyone into the main story. And so they put a lot of them into the side missions or these little challenges that you have to do. So this provides a way for all these different characters to have a place inside of the game while not overly complicating or crowding up the main storyline. From there, let's move on to the mixed aspects of this game. And the big gigantic thing that comes to mind is that this game is essentially Spider-Man Arkham. The gameplay is very similar to the Batman Arkham games. The fighting system is very similar to the Batman Arkham games. The side challenges, very similar to the Batman Arkham game. The Bat Claw and the swing dynamics are very similar to each other. And so if you're looking for a truly unique video game experience, that's not really what this is. But for me, I don't know why you'd want them to do anything else with the Spider-Man character. That's the perfect franchise to build off of to provide us a Spider-Man game. And that's what I feel like they did. They took the best elements of that franchise and built on top of it and used modern technology to provide a better version than the Batman Arkham games. That's full respect to the Arkham games, but with several years of advances in technology and lessons learned from multiple games, I think this is a better version, and this is the game that I wanted a Batman Arkham game to be, where you would get to live throughout the normal city of Gotham, except here we are with Spider-Man inside of New York City. So for me, I can see where some people might criticize this game as too derivative of the Batman Arkham games, but for me, that's a positive. That is the perfect franchise to build off of to make a Spider-Man game, and they did build and improve upon it. From there, let's move on to the negative aspects of this game, and I don't have any big gigantic problems. There's very specific things that really frustrated me as I was playing through the game, so here's a few what those look like. First off, there's several times in the game where there's interactive elements inside of a cutscene, and for the most part, I'm not particularly a fan of that type of thing, usually because it's not like it's hard or fun to do what they're asking you to do. It's literally just like move this circle over to this circle and push one button. But because it's incorporated inside of a cutscene, sometimes I'd put the remote down and I'd grab a drink and then I'm just kind of watching the cutscene, paying attention to the story, and then suddenly I need to pick the remote back up and kind of move something over. It's like, okay, that was very sudden. And then when I fail because I wasn't ready for it, it repeats this, a minute of a cutscene to get back to this moment in time where all I have to do is move a circle over and push a button. That sort of stuff kind of annoys me when games do that sort of thing. Likewise, early in the game, there's a few points in time where as you're kind of learning the game dynamics and how things work, it'll put you in the middle of a mission where suddenly you need to be good at something that you haven't had a lot of time to practice yet, or at least I hadn't had a lot of time to practice yet. In particular, there was one with the Shocker character where you have to chase him through the city, swinging through it really fast, and I wasn't very good at web slinging and swinging just yet, and therefore it was really frustrating, and it took me a long time to actually catch him because I'd chase him for 10 minutes and then I'd make one wrong move and he'd get away. away and I'd have to repeat the entire thing. And once again, that's not the most fun way to add challenge into a game. Likewise, there's several different points in time or contexts in the game where you have to fight like 5 waves of thugs, where you have to go through several different rounds with a main villain, and you can get through 15 minutes of gameplay doing great, and then you get hit with a missile from behind, or Dr. Octavius throws something at you, and you die instantly. And it doesn't feel like you weren't doing well or grew or learned anything. It just feels like you got sucker punched and therefore you got beat. And that just doesn't feel like the right way to add difficulty into the game. There were other rounds in the game where I had to struggle and repeat things to beat certain parts of it, but I felt like I was learning what I was doing wrong, whereas other times it just felt like I said, cheap shots from behind. And finally, as you're playing through the main storyline, one of the gameplay elements is trying to reprogram things for Dr. Octavius, and essentially it's kind of like a little puzzle game inside of it that would feel like something you'd play on your iPhone, which doing it a couple times would have been okay and engaged you in this storyline involving Dr. Octavius and his kind of story arc throughout the game, but because you have to do it so many times and you have to play through like 5 puzzles each time, it gets pretty tedious at a point in time, because that's not the reason I wanted to play a Spider-Man game, was to do cheap little puzzle games. So that was pretty frustrating at a certain point in time. But honestly, these are very small complaints inside of a great game. Before I give you my final recommendation on this one, go ahead and tell me down below in the comment section, did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you frustrated that you can't play it? Also, once this video is done, check out this playlist up here of my best and most up-to-date Spider-Man rankings. But as for this game, it is one of the best superhero games I have ever played, and I would say it is definitely worth buying at full price. Be sure to check out that playlist to the left of some of my best Spider-Man rankings. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep talking movies and video games too much.